Charles over here. Obviously, you know, we've done a media day ahead of your fight against Michael Chandler years ago, but now that the rematch is happening, I'm curious how his fight camp been this time preparing for a guy, you know, you not only beat him, but it was one of the more spectacular performances of your career.
Obviamente a gente já fez media day desse aqui para você, para uma luta entre você e o Michael Chandler. A gente sabe o que aconteceu. Qual que é a diferença entre você está aqui agora fazendo o media day para ele numa luta que um cara que você não só já venceu, mas uma das performances mais bacanas que você teve na tua carreira?
Olha, de verdade, aquela já passou. A gente está focado nessa agora e com certeza vai ser um grande show. Experiência, tem 2, 3 anos aquela luta, então com certeza ele querendo provar que pode vencer e eu querendo provar que eu posso vencer mais uma vez. Então aquela já foi, vamos focar nessa.
You know, that one has passed. We're focused on this one right now. That was experience. I mean, he's trying to prove that he can beat me. I'm trying to prove that I can beat him again. Let's put that in the past and let's focus on this one.
You've had a lot of rematches, you know, the Jim Miller rematch, the Nick Lanson trilogy. I'm curious, do you approach rematches differently the second, third time around as opposed to the first one?
Você já teve oportunidade de revanche, vingança, ou que seja, lutar contra o mesmo lutador a segunda vez. Como é que você lida com isso? Como é que você se prepara para enfrentar alguém pela segunda vez?
Olha, de verdade, você tem que estar sempre melhorando. E é isso que eu faço. Eu volto para a academia para melhorar. Não importa se eu venci o cara ou se eu já perdi. Eu só quero melhorar, sabe? Então, eu venho aqui e faço a diferença. Né? Eu já lutei contra o Jim Miller e eu tinha perdido e eu vim bem melhor e venci. Eu tinha vencido o Nick Landis e eu fui lá e venci de novo. E o plano é esse. Eu já venci o Michael Chandler e eu quero vencer de novo. Eu estou pronto para isso.
The plan is always to get better, always to improve. That's what we go back to the gym. That's what the fighter does. We go back, you just work at it, you improve things that you need to. You know, lost Jim Miller, I went back and went out there and beat him. Nick, same thing. And now Michael Chandler, I know I beat him, but is always getting better and trying to improve for the next fight.
He used the phrase that Michael Chandler 1.0 was out for blood. Michael Chandler 2.0 is now out for the belt, and his plan is to show you the exit sign and separate you from your consciousness. So I'm curious, are you expecting a different style or approach from Michael this time around?
Ele falou que o Michael Chandler 1.0 queria sangue. O Michael Chandler 2.0 quer um cinturão. E ele disse que vai chegar e separar você da sua consciência. O que você pensa disso?
Legal, eu não vou estar lá, né, parado, né? Eu vou estar fazendo acontecer. Eu acho que a gente tem que planejar coisas e fazer acontecer, né? A mesma vontade que ele tem de se tornar campeão pela primeira vez, eu tenho a vontade de se tornar campeão pela segunda. O campeão do peso leve, você sabe quem é. Eu estou aqui, eu estou pronto para isso. Sabe, eu vou se tornar campeão de novo. Então a gente tem que ir um passo de cada vez. Meu primeiro passo é Michael Chandler. Eu já venci esse cara uma vez, eu vou vencer de novo.
Listen, I'm going to be there. He wants to be a champion for the first time. I want to be the champion again. I mean, the champion of the lightweight division has a name. You know this. And I beat Michael Chandler once, and I'm going to beat Michael Chandler again.
You know, he also said, you know, this is how it was always supposed to be because, you know, he was close to the lightweight title. You're the one that kept him from the title. He's never won at Madison Square Garden. He has another opportunity to not just avenge a loss, but get his first win in MSG. So what does this fight do for you? Is it just another step to the title, or is there other underlying meaning behind this fight for you?
E ele acha que você parou um processo, que ele estava caminho para ser campeão, você parou isso. Ele também não venceu aqui no Madison Square Garden, ele quer vencer, então ele quer basicamente não só uma revanche contra você, mas também uma revanche em Nova York, ou seja, vencer uma luta assim. Como é que você vê isso, essa maneira de ele ver que ele quer tudo isso ao mesmo tempo?
Olha, de verdade, todos os caras vêm aqui e eles falam um monte de coisas. Que eles vão parar, que eles vão vencer, que eles vão fazer. Isso é o normal, todas as vezes que você chega aqui é a mesma coisa. Lutar aqui é mágico, sabe? Ter milhares de pessoas torcendo e vibrando por você é mágico. Eu só quero simplesmente ser eu e fazer história. É isso que vai acontecer. Dia 16 eu vou andar para frente, eu vou caminhar para frente, eu vou procurar essa luta. Eu vou caçar esse cara o tempo inteiro.
I think a lot of people come and talk. Everybody comes here and says the same thing. They talk the talk. They say they have plans about things, that they're gonna do something. But you have to come here and do things. This is a magical stage, a great place to be. I mean, the energy of the crowd and everybody around you is magical as well. And you know, I'm going to be there in this fight all along. I'm going to be pushing forward, charging forward, and on the 16th, you're going to see it happening.
Just last one for me. Can I get your thoughts on the main event between John and Stipe?
E a última pergunta de você. Pensamentos gerais. O que você acha que vai acontecer entre Jones e Miocic?
Olha, são dois grandes nomes, dois caras que eu respeito gigantescamente, mas um cara que eu sempre admirei, John Jones, então a torcida vai ser para ele.
Two great names, two guys that I respect immensely, but it's a guy that I admire all throughout, John Jones, and I'm rooting for him.
Charles over here. You just mentioned you admire John Jones, and on this card there is the fighters with the most title fight wins, the most fights, the most wins, the most finishes, bonuses, and submissions between you, John, and Jim Miller. I guess, what does it mean to be sharing a card with some all-time greats and fellow record holders?
Você mencionou o fato de que você admira o John Jones desde o começo, e nesse card nós temos maior número de vitórias, maior número de títulos, maior número de finalizações, maior número de lutas. Entre você, o John Jones e o Jim Miller tem isso. O que significa dividir esse palco com esses grandes, sendo você um deles?
Cara, isso é gigante. Quando a gente fala sobre legado, é isso que é o legado. A gente deixar a história, a gente deixar grandes coisas, grandes recordes e fazer parte disso, estar num celeiro de grandes recordes e grandes nomes, isso é importante. Então, feliz demais de poder estar participando disso.
Enormous. It's what I talk when we talk about legacy. That's what we talk about. It's being with amongst the greatest, doing greatest things, being in you're part of a hotbed of talent, and you're with them, and it's amazing to be sharing the stage with them.
Do you believe you'll be the first fighter to get 20 bonuses in the UFC with another one on Saturday?
Você acha que você vai ser o primeiro cara a ter 20 bônus no UFC com mais um no sábado?
Cara, de verdade, eu não venho aqui procurando o bônus me procura. Então, eu vou estar lá para lutar e para dar um grande show. Quem sabe ele venha.
Listen, I don't come here looking for bonuses. The bonuses find me. I'm going to be, I'll be out there and may have it on Saturday then.
And if you do win this fight and get the title shot, is there a fight you would rather avenge more between Arman and Islam?
Digamos, você ganha essa luta no sábado e você luta pelo cinturão. Tem uma luta que você gostaria de ter mais do que a outra? Ou seja, a oportunidade de ter uma revanche contra o Arman ou contra o Islam?
Olha, de verdade, todo lutador que se torna campeão, então eu estou em busca desse título. Aquele que tiver com o cinturão é o cara que eu quero mais. Sabe, eu não estou em busca do Arman ou do Islam. Eu estou em busca do título. Eles vão se enfrentar e eu vou estar sentado lá na primeira fila. Aquele que vencer é aquele que eu quero.
Really, a fighter wants to be a champion, and that's what we want, and you want the title. So I'll tell you what, I'm not looking for Arman, I'm not looking for Islam, I'm looking for who has a title. Whenever they go at it, I will be there first row watching it. And whoever has that belt, that's the person I want to get.
Charles, right here to your right, to this side. This side. You just coming off that really close debated loss against Arman Tsarukyan. A lot of people thought you won that fight. What did you learn in a loss that makes you better for this fight?
Você acaba de vir de uma luta extremamente contestada, debatida, inclusive. Muita gente acha que você ganhou do Arman Tsarukyan. O que você traz daquela luta para essa luta?
Pô, foi uma luta que muita gente achou que eu venci, outras achou que eu perdi. Eu achei que eu venci o primeiro e o terceiro round, mas essa luta já foi, já passou. Eu só não quero ficar parado, esperando igual eu esperei na próxima luta, na última luta. Então, por isso que eu vim caçar. Eu só vou andar para frente, não importa o que está acontecendo. Eu só vou andar para frente, sabe? É isso que eu planejei, é isso que eu coloquei na cabeça. Lógico, eu tenho uma estratégia montada, mas eu quero só caçar. Eu vou procurar essa luta, eu vou procurar a vitória o tempo inteiro.
I know that that was a very highly debatable. Some people think that he won. I think I won the first and the third round, but that's in the past right now. The one thing, I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to wait for the fight to come to me. I'm going to push forward, hunt, and get to that fight all along. I know I have a strategy plan and I have something in my head, but I will be looking for a fight all throughout that fight.
Speaking of that fight, you battled both of them. I know you said you're ready for either one, but who do you think wins that fight?
Você falou que você não se importa exatamente com quem que você luta, entre Arman e Islam, que para você o negócio é o cinturão mesmo, mas a pergunta é, quem que você acha que ganha entre Tsarukyan e Makhachev?
Cara, é difícil falar, são dois caras que fazem um jogo parecido, dois caras que gostam de procurar luta agarrada. Lógico, o Islam tem um pouquinho ali na frente, tem um pouco mais de chance de vencer. Eu acho que tem um pouco da trocação ali avançada, mas aquele que tiver melhor vai vencer no dia.
Very hard to say. These guys are very similar to each other, similar styles, great grappling on both sides. I do think Islam is a little step ahead. I think he's got a more advanced and involved striking, but I think the fighter that wins is the one that feels better and is more tuned in that day.
Max Holloway is coming back to the division. You have history with him. You're a fan favorite. He's a fan favorite. You're both BMFers. I think that'd be a major fight. Is that someone that's on his radar?
Max Holloway, voltando aí para a categoria, vocês têm história. Ele é um fã, ele é um favorito da galera. Você é um favorito da galera. Um BMF não seria uma má opção. Você acha que é uma opção para você também?
Acho que seria top. Acho que eu mereço isso também. Né? Todos os caras gigantes eu já lutei, nocauteei, finalizei. A última luta eu tive uma lesão contra ele, então por que não? Seria top.
I think it would be amazing. Listen, all the greats, I fought, I finished, I've knocked out. With him, I had the injury, so I think it would be a great opportunity.
And my last question, John Jones keeps talking about his legacy, building his legacy this week. What does he think his legacy is, and how does he want to be remembered?
Última pergunta dele, o John Jones falou a semana inteira sobre o legado dele. Construir um legado, deixar um legado, que é isso que ele quer fazer nessa luta, nesse final de semana contra o Stipe. Qual é o teu legado? O que você acha que... Como é que você descreveria o teu legado e o que você representa?
Cara, de verdade, eu venho construindo meu legado ao mesmo tempo. Recordes de bônus, recordes de finalizações, da onde que eu saí, aonde que eu cheguei, da forma que eu lutei, sem falar ninguém, sem polêmica nenhuma, sem nada de errado. Um cara iluminado que veio de dentro da comunidade para o mundo para brilhar. É isso que eu sou. É esse legado que eu quero deixar. Você não precisa xingar ninguém para você ter algo ou você conquistar algo. Você não precisa ser maior que ninguém, sabe? Você só mantém o seu pé no chão, ser humilde, acreditar no homem lá de cima. Esse é o meu legado.
My legacy, I think it was built with everything that I've done, is the records, the bonuses, the finishes, the knockouts. It's the way I approach things, it's the way I fight, the way I behave. I think somebody that has not talked crap about anybody. I'm not here to cause any controversy or anything of the sort. Always being respectful to everybody is where I came from, and where I've gotten is the way I approach things. And I've gotten to this place without having to put anybody down. I didn't have to step on over anybody. And I've always had my feet on the ground, being humble. I look where I'm from. I never forgot that. And I think that everything has built up to a legacy. That's my legacy.
Charles, boa tarde. Como você tem preparado seu camp de treino para essa luta?
How's your camp for this fight specifically?
Oi, boa tarde. Meu campo foi todo feito em São Paulo, no Chutebox de Lima. É um campo perfeito, onde que tive muita gente treinando, muita dedicação, muito sangue, muito suor, sabe, muita estratégia. A gente está pronto para essa luta.
Camp was all done in Brazil, very tough, very focused. At Chutebox de Lima, everything was done in São Paulo. A lot of dedication, a lot of sweat, a lot of guts, and we're ready for this fight.
Em que aspectos você acha que pode ter nível superior ao Chandler?
In what aspects do you think you're in a higher level than Chandler?
Olha, de verdade, com todo o respeito do mundo, eu estou passo à frente em cada coisa, tanto em pé, no wrestling, no chão, no jiu-jitsu. Com todo o respeito, de verdade, é isso que eu penso, é isso que eu acho que sou.
With all due respect to Chandler, but I do believe that I'm one step ahead in everything. I'm one step ahead when I'm standing and fighting him. I'm one step ahead in wrestling, jiu-jitsu, anywhere. I do, again, with all the respect in the world, I do believe that I'm one step ahead of him.
Charles, back here. Hi. The lightweight division has a lot of really good fighters and one of the most interesting divisions in the UFC right now. And your fellow Brazilian, Renato Moicano, has been doing well in the division as well, and he has sang your praises. If he continues to go on this path that he's going up the ranks, is that a fight that you would welcome in the future, and what are your thoughts on his progress?
Falando da categoria, a gente sabe que os leves é onde está o talento, muita gente talentosa, muita gente vindo com muita sede, muitas vitórias, o pessoal está vindo com tudo. falando do Moicano. O Moicano tem tido boas lutas, ótimas performances. É um cara que as pessoas estão falando do Moicano. Se eventualmente o Moicano continua no caminho que ele está, é uma luta que te interessa? Você se vê enfrentando o Moicano?
Olha, cara, de verdade eu fico feliz, né? Os brasileiros estão vindo, fazendo história, né? Eu acho que esse é o meu pensamento, eu acho que tem que tomar cuidado, né? Vim devagar, vim tranquilo, o Moicano aprendeu a jogar, fala bastante, né? Isso o público gosta, tá vindo numa sequência boa de vitória. Hoje eu não penso olhando para trás, eu penso olhando para frente, então, lógico que se chegar e o UFC me ligar e falar, pô, esse é o cara, por que não? Eu tô aqui para lutar contra qualquer um, é assim que é, mas hoje eu não penso nisso.
I think, Moicano's been, first of all, very happy to all the Brazilian success with everything that they've been able to accomplish. Moicano's been doing a great job, not only in his performances, but he knows how to play the game. He talks the talk. I think people like it. So he's really understood that. And again, if I look towards the future, I look ahead, not back and not backwards. So I'm not thinking about this now, but if the UFC ever comes to me and says, listen, that's a fight for us to make, of course, I'll be ready for it.
Obrigado.
Okay, Charles on your left. So I wanted to ask you about your shorts. I really love them. As we all know, the inspiration was Favela, so I really appreciate that you remember where you're coming from. I just wanted to ask that you're a man who's got everything, you accomplished so many things. Some would say that you accomplished everything that you would have planned, that you would have dreamed of. What would you tell a little kid, little Charles Oliveira in the streets of Favela as a little kid? What are the words that you would say to him today from this perspective?
Primeiro de tudo, parabéns. Muito bacana o teu shorts, muito legal. A gente viu os shorts e viu o design, muito bacana ver que você colocou a favela ali, você colocou de onde você veio, e é muito legal, você falou de não esquecer de onde você é. Que mensagem que você dá para um possível pequeno Charles Oliveira, que está vindo na favela, que quer alguma coisa na vida? O que você diz para ele hoje, com tudo aquilo que você conseguiu conquistar?
Olha, de verdade, eu sempre quero lembrar isso, da onde que eu venho, sabe? Nos momentos difíceis você tem que pensar isso, da onde você veio, aonde que eu estou e aonde eu quero chegar. Então, a minha mensagem é isso, não desista dos seus sonhos, acredite em Deus, não importa o quanto que é difícil lá na frente, sabe? A vitória tem um sabor de mel, tá ligado? Então, não desista, tá ligado? Continue. Porque um cara que nasce dentro da comunidade, dentro da favela, é um pouco mais difícil do que o dos outros, tá ligado? Você já nasce, desculpa, na merda, tá ligado? Então, você tem que querer mais, tá ligado? Você tem que se dedicar mais do que os outros. Não é porque... Eu tô falando da minha realidade, tá ligado? O cara que mora tem uma vida melhor, não é que ele não quer mais, tá ligado? Mas ele já tem uma vida boa, então ele tem que querer. Agora você imagina pra quem vive na merda. Tem que querer 10 vezes mais. Então a mensagem pro moleque pobre, louco, favelado é isso. Não desista do seu sonho, né, com a porra. Continue, tá ligado? Vai dar certo.
I never forget that. I try, and I never forget I always remember where I came from. And for a boy that's coming, I would say the same thing. You just, first of all, do not give up on your dreams. Do not stop believing in God. And don't forget that the victory tastes sweeter when you're up there. For any boy that's coming, listen, we come in, and I'm sorry to use this term, but come from a pretty shitty situation. That's when we're from the favela. And a boy that's coming from there, he has to work extra hard. Like I've accomplished a lot of things in my life, and I've gotten a lot of things. So obviously, I have a lot of things already, and I have to remind myself to continue to work harder. But a boy that's coming from a favela, he has to work 10 times extra hard, and that's what I would say. Listen, again, if you're in a shitty situation, you have to get out of that. You have to work. You have to keep working. You cannot give up on your dreams, and that's what I would tell a little boy. Just continue because it's worth it.
Thank you for an amazing answer. And one more question from me, please. We talked about how stacked lightweight division is, and there are so many contenders, so many great fighters, but there's also one more force, probably eyeing the lightweight division, which is Ilia Topuria, probably like thinking about fighting Islam Makhachev or maybe Arman Tsarukyan, whoever wins the fight. So how do you see the chances for Ilya in terms of becoming a champion in lightweight, maybe fighting Islam Makhachev, and do you see someday you yourself fighting Ilya Topuria for the lightweight title?
Obrigado pela resposta sincera na resposta anterior. A gente fala do talento que tem nos leves, a gente já comentou aqui várias vezes sobre todo mundo que está lá na categoria, mas tem esse cavalo, literalmente, que ele mencionou, que está correndo por fora, que é o Ilya Topuria, por conta do fato que ele já falou que enfrentar um Islam Makhachev se for necessário, se for que seja enfrentar o Tsarukyan, seja ele que ganhe. Tá. Como é que você vê o fato de ele enfrentar um dos dois e você se vê no futuro enfrentando o Ilya Topuria?
Cara, o Ilya Topuria é um cara que duríssimo, é um cara que fala e vem fazendo, é um cara que eu gosto de ver lutar, né? Eu acho que o peso leve é uma categoria mais difícil, né? Então acho que as pessoas têm que tomar cuidado quando falam de subir de categoria. Mas eu acho que todo mundo, quando coloca o cinturão na cintura, quer desafiar o cara que ganhou andar de cima ou andar de baixo, porque quer se tornar campeão de 2 categorias, né? Então, eu não sei como que seria o Ilya Topuria no peso leve, mas ele é um cara perigoso.
Ilya is a tough fighter, someone who talks the talk and walks the walk. He's doing things. And I can see why he would want to challenge people, and I think a lot of people, he would be obviously a tough fight, and I think that what happens is a lot of fighters, whenever they get a belt and they have that belt wrapped around their waist, they start thinking up and down in the divisions, and you want to challenge things, but I think you have to be very careful when you're coming up to lightweight, because this is tough. This is a very tough division. But at any rate, I think he's a very tough and very dangerous guy.
Hi, Charles here. Question. In front of the fight between Arman and Islam, a lot of people picking the favorite fighter Islam, because comparing 2 fights between your fight with Islam and Arman, since you fought close to Islam, you got the fight, right?
Olhando para a luta do Islam contra o Arman, muita gente dá um favoritismo para o Islam, assim como você mesmo deu um pouco, pelo fato, comparando a tua luta com eles, porque o Islam teve uma performance contra você e o Arman teve outra que foi completamente mais difícil, foi uma luta dura e até contestada. Como é que você vê isso, sendo a comparação, essa referência para os dois?
Cara, fico feliz deles comparar isso, mas eu olho não por isso, olho pelos grandes nomes que o Islam lutou e da forma que lutou. Eu acho que o Islam tem um pouco de favoritismo meio ali na parte em pé, nada demais, nada demais, é bem pouco. Vai ser uma grande luta, vai ser uma luta duríssima. Eu acho que aquele que tiver melhor no dia da luta, sabe, tipo mentalmente, fisicamente, é o que vai vencer.
I think I'm very flattered about the fact that they use me as a comparison for the fights, but I think Islam is ahead because of the people that he fought. I think the competition that he's had. I mean, he's fought some really tough people. I've said this. I think that they're really tough fighters. I think that Islam is ahead by a little bit, just a tad, but I do believe that the one that's more mentally and physically ready on that day comes out with the win.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Charles, your son Dominic was born just over a month ago. You talked about the struggles of growing up in the favelas. How has his birth changed your mindset as a fighter? And then in the same time, how much does it mean to be able to have him born in such a different situation than you were raised in?
Dominic está com um pouquinho mais que um mês, né? E ele, você mencionou, ele, ao contrário das dificuldades que você teve ao longo da tua vida, ele vai ter uma vida que você conseguiu prover ele, bem diferente. Primeiro de tudo, que motivação que o Dominic dá para você agora ter conseguido, agora você acabou de ser pai novamente, e também o fato de você poder ter dado, ou estar dando uma vida para ele que você nunca teve.
Cara, primeiro, com certeza, enorme, né, gigante. Quero mostrar para meu filho que eu posso se tornar campeão de novo. Eu quero ganhar esse cinturão de novo para ele, da mesma forma que eu fiz com a minha filha, Tayla. Então, isso é gigante. E eu fico grato porque meus pais fizeram o melhor por mim e agora eu quero fazer o melhor pelo meu filho, sabe? Mas da mesma forma que eu sempre venho fazendo. Independente do que tem, da onde mora, saiba que você tem que ir para o mesmo lugar que todo mundo, pé no chão, seja humilde, respeitador, é dessa forma que eu quero educar meu filho.
It's a great opportunity to show my son that I can be a champion again And just like I was able to show Tyler, my daughter, that I was able to become a champion. As far as providing, my parents have given me everything, all the support that I needed. So be able to actually provide that to my son as well, and just being able to provide that and showing to him where we come from, but always having, because don't forget, we all end up in the same place. So have your feet on the ground and keep yourself very grounded throughout life. But it's amazing to actually have that opportunity to show him that, and that's the lesson that I want to teach my son.
What's up? What's up, brother? I mean, you've been up here doing media, press conferences, scrums for a while, but this is the first time it's been on a fight week for quite some time. I'm assuming you are as desperate to get in that cage as you've ever been this Saturday.
Yeah. Looking back over the last 2 years, I had my moments. I had, moments of doubt, moments of wanting things to move forward, wanting to get to the next thing, wanting fights to be booked, wanting all of those different things. But now as I sit here confidently in this chair, I know that 2 years happened for me. And it was a really, really, really good process for me as a human being, as an athlete. And I'm the happiest, the healthiest, and the hardest to kill that I've ever been right now. And I'm excited to go compete.
We've spoken about what some of the outside looking in people would have to say about your hiatus, and we know that they're due for doing that. But what lessons have you learned that maybe us on the outside wouldn't have realized or wouldn't realize you could learn?
It's a great question. I mean, there's so many, man. I will look back and some of them haven't even hit me yet. But patience is a virtue, right? It is one of the most important attributes that we can have as human beings. Yet sometimes when you flex extreme patience, you flex that extreme patience muscle, people question it, right? And yeah, it made a lot of sense. I understand what people were saying. I get it. But ultimately, whether people think that I was being hindered by and governed by outside circumstances, or whether or not they thought I was not in control, some of that is true and some of that is not true. At any given time, I could have called Hunter, called Dana, said, I'm off this train. Forget Connor. Give me the next guy. So I chose to wait. Maybe that's just me taking extreme accountability, which I think is a superpower. And I also just know who Michael Chandler is outside of fighting inside of an octagon. All the businesses I've been working on, spending so much time with my wife and my sons, really building myself up. I mean, if you look at my track record, you look at my strength of schedule, you look at the guys that I have fought in the first 26 months, six training camps, 5 fights. Every single fight was do or die, fight of the night, fight of the year, knockout of the year, debut of the year. It was just a crazy run. And a little bit of time off was not what I wanted, but it was what I needed. So the sport was taken away from me for about 1.5 years until I got into that Connor camp, and then there was a little bit of a lull to go into this Charles camp. And I'm happy it happened.
Charles Oliveira, you had one hand on the UFC title in that fight with Charles. There is a world where if you zag instead of zig this weekend, that he could maybe stop you from getting that title again, or even steal the Conor fight from you. In that sense, has Charles sort of become this manifestation of someone in your way, a roadblock that you have to overcome for your career to reach the heights that you want to reach?
That's a great perspective. I mean, I guess, yeah, you could definitely say that. I just think the way that I see it is that this is the way that it was always supposed to be. That this opportunity, getting my hand raised on Saturday night, gets me to the #1 contender spot, and I fight for the title next. And it just so happens that it's the guy who shattered my dreams of becoming the lightweight champion. In this sport, almost does not count. You could have 10 other referees in that fight with me and Charles at UFC 262, and maybe the other 10 step in. I have not hung my hat on that. I have no regrets. I'm not mad at the sport. That's the way the sport goes. But yeah, ultimately, Charles is just another guy with 2 arms and 2 legs who's my size, and I get to perform in front of a Madison Square Garden crowd, get to blow the roof off the place, steal the show, and to reintroduce myself to the mixed martial arts world and the sporting world of who I am, why I fight, and who I fight for. And It's going to be a blast, and I think it's you could not have scripted it any better. People love a comeback story, and this one's going to be special.
Last one from me. If Charles gets your back, are you going to jump and slam yourself backwards again, or are you going to move on from that?
I don't know, because I don't know who Charles is fighting. I don't know that guy. He makes ill-advised decisions at times, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. It will be vintage Michael Chandler, foot on the gas and nonstop action. So don't blink and buy that pay-per-view.
Mike, right here. Normally when you get, there's like a highlight reel finish from one guy, when the rematch possibly comes around, they seem kind of reluctant to take that rematch because their thought process is like, what can I do to top that first performance? Charles, that was the peak of his career, some would say, and then now he's rematching you and there's no belt on the line in the co-main event. Were you surprised that he even accepted this when they presented it to him?
Not surprised at all. I mean, Charles would fight anybody. Charles will fight anybody. I realize the man I'm up against. I realize the dangers that he poses. He is a decorated veteran, decorated former champion, and a decorated former foe of mine who beat me. I think, in these type of situations, there's a lot of talks that are happening behind the scenes. I mean, it just depends on what your motivation is. I think Charles Oliveira's motivation is his conversations with the UFC go very simple in Portuguese. I want to fight for the title, and I'm sure the UFC said, okay, if you want to fight for the title, you got to get through this guy. This is the guy. And when his name got thrown out there after the Conor stuff started falling through and it looked like he wasn't coming back anytime soon, Charles Oliveira is the perfect opponent for me. It is the perfect time, and you could not have scripted it any better. So I'm not surprised whatsoever because Charles is a stud.
And there's like a group of lightweights, like you, Poirier, Charles, like you always seem one win away. Like even if you lose 2 in a row, you win, you could fight for the title next. Like, do you kind of agree with that? Like you're in that group of like Dustin lost, but then he won, and all of a sudden he's fighting for the title again.
Yeah, I mean, it's track record, it's strength of schedule. I'm just happy I'm in this position now. No, I don't even have a fraction of the UFC fights that Poirier has, or Charles has, or some of these guys. But now I've been in the UFC long enough and fought the toughest guys, and obviously knocked out Dan Hooker. Now Dan Hooker's ranked ahead of me because he has come back and had a resurgence. I mean, it's the most violent and the most exciting division in the UFC, in the sporting world. And I am so blessed to be a part of it, so blessed to be in it. And on Saturday night, I will be very blessed to be the highest ranked guy in it, not named Arman Tsarukyan or Islam Makhachev, and solidifying myself as the number 1 contender.
Then just last one for me. Can you just get your thoughts on the main event between John and Stipe?
Man, the 2 heavyweight goats, it's going to be exciting. I mean, obviously, you look at both guys' attributes, both being out of competition for a little while, it brings a certain amount of intrigue and mystique when guys have been out for a while. Man, you got John Jones, who is everybody's GOAT, definitely Dana's GOAT. And then you got Stipe, who has so many tools, and they're both exciting. I mean, we're talking about a heavyweight fight. Sometimes heavyweight fights can tend to be a little bit boring, a little bit slow. These guys are out for blood. These guys are out for a finish from the first bell to the last bell. So make sure you buy that pay-per-view early.
Mike, right here. You mentioned you'll be the highest-ranked guy. Besides the next 2 we expect to fight for the title. That fight could maybe happen in January. Then if it's Islam, it could be a break for Ramadan and stuff. So ideally, in your mind, when you think about fighting for the title, what does the timeline for that look like?
Yeah, obviously it's not up to me. It depends on how it all plays out. And that's, I've laid out my roadmap on camera, on the microphone. Obviously, you still got the Conor fight. That's a possibility, depending on when he gets his house in order and when he comes back and when all that stuff gets figured out. I think it's a fight that Conor wants. It's a fight that I want. We need to finish tough 31. So that could be something that happens in between. And I'm a guy who wants to lay all my chips on the table at times. I'm not afraid to lay all my chips on the table and bet on myself to say, hey, you've already secured a title shot, but now Conor's coming back. You want to take that before you fight for the title to possibly take the chance of losing it? We'll see what happens. I'm not saying yes to that. I'm not saying no to that. But I also don't know if I want to be off from November all the way to June, July, whenever it may be. I just spent 2 years on the sidelines. I don't believe this whole age thing. I don't believe in ring rust. I feel 25. I feel the most dangerous I ever have been. But the clock is always ticking, and I don't like to waste time. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, how it plays out. I don't know if I want to wait till June or July or whenever it is, because obviously he's got to go into training camp after Ramadan, which ends in March, then April and May. So we'll see how it plays out.
And you obviously are one of the most exciting fighters in the sport.
The most. I am the most, absolutely. And you guys will remember on Saturday night.
And, that has been for better or worse sometimes, right? And you hear, and will any of that work, if so, matter when there's 20,000 people screaming inside Madison Square Garden?
Madison Square Garden does things to a man when he's locked inside of an octagon that few will ever be able to experience, and you cannot put it into words. But that's also why I took this fight, and that's also another layer of the story. A guy who has not won a fight in Madison Square Garden. I have not won a fight in Madison Square Garden. Once again, it's another hill to climb. It's another opportunity to prove to myself that I have continued to grow. You're going to see a lot different version of me. As I've said, Chandler 1.0 was out for blood. Chandler 2.0 is out for the belt. That does not mean it's going to be any less exciting. It does not mean that I'm going to take my foot off the gas. It does not mean it's going to be any less violent, because I only know how to fight one way, and that is extremely fast-paced and extremely violent. It's just going to be a little bit more calculated, and I will separate Charles Oliveira from consciousness on Saturday night.
Michael, to your right. To your right.
Yes, sir.
You talked about your all these things that you've done since your layoff. You've got investing in houses and all this. During this time off, you ever just say to yourself, I'm set, screw it, retire?
No, I have not, man. If anything, it made me, unfortunately for my wife, or even my managers who are like, hey, man, why don't you hang it up? They'll think about hanging it up sometime soon. I'm like, man, I feel like I just turned back the hands of time. I think I just fell in love even more with the sport. I mean, absence makes the heart grow fonder. And it's exactly what I needed. I fell even more in love with the sport, even through the trials and the ups and the downs and all the stuff I had to deal with. That is, being a part of the last 2 years with the whole Conor situation. But now I've got a new lease on life. I've got a new lease on this career. The vision seems so much more clear. And honestly, the sport seems freaking easy. The sport seems so much easier than it was a couple years ago. And sometimes things need to be taken away from you to have a different perspective on it. Getting locked into an octagon against Charles Oliveira is not an easy task. I don't want to make it sound like this is easy, but just my perspective of the sport is just an easier, it's a lighter load. It's a less of a burden, and I'm excited to go compete.
With this win, you said you expect to fight for a title. You kind of mentioned Islam. But Arman Tsarukyan's another option if he wins. I mean, what's your take on that fight? Do you think he's got a good chance?
I think if you look at history and their first fight together, obviously it was a barn burner. It was pretty close in a lot of people's eyes. I don't know if I've actually watched that fight. I've just heard from people that it was close. But Arman obviously beat Oliveira last fight. Arman has been charging forward. I think right now I will be surprised if Arman pulls it off. I think Islam has continued to solidify himself as the best lightweight in the world by far with his performances. And I have no problem saying that. His hands are getting better. He just outstruck Poirier. He can outgrapple anybody. And I think he truly is doing it for more than just the punches, kicks, knees, and elbows and being the UFC champ and the glitz and glam. He's got something deeper that he's fighting for. He's fighting for an entire village, an entire portion of the country, an entire religion, and an entire legacy for himself and also Habib and Habib's father. So it's something special. It's a beautiful story. And I think Islam's going to get his hand raised. And I think it's once again, the perfect story that for me to avenge the loss against Oliveira and then fight a guy who's even more highly regarded than Charles Oliveira, and that's Islam Makhachev.
You've always come off as a very genuine guy in this sport, very honest and open. Another guy similar to that is in your division, Dustin Poirier, but he doesn't like you. He's called you fake. He's called you a dirty fighter. I know you bickered back and forth on Twitter. Is that someone that you're saying, hey, if I'm not getting a title shot, let's run that one back? I mean, it was a great fight already, and now you guys got some personal beef.
Yeah, I mean, not really. I mean, Dustin's got to win over me. He's never going to take the chance of one of his last couple fights to put that on the line and lose to me and have that stain on him the rest of his life. So I know that for sure, and I'm not really worried about it. I mean, I will be ranked ahead of him Saturday night at midnight when I beat Charles Oliveira, and we've got other options. I mean, Max for the BMF belt, Islam for the title. Obviously, you still got the Conor fight, still got the Tough 31, finishing that, which needs to be finished. We had a contract signed. I mean, there's a lot of options for me, and I don't think he's necessarily one of them at all. But maybe someday we'll squash the beef. Probably not. I think we will at some point. Right now, we're just two dudes in the same division, looking toward the same thing.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, on your left. So I wanted to ask about the fight you just mentioned. So we're talking about your options, which are not a few, but you said that you want to fight earlier than June or July. And fight with Max Holloway makes a lot of sense in my mind because of, like you were saying that you are the most exciting fighter in the UFC right now. Probably Max is somewhere there too because like people love to see Max fight. I personally would love to see you and Max fight for BMF. Do you think that this could be an option for you to fight earlier than June or July, maybe fight in spring, or maybe also a trilogy with Charles could be an option? What do you think are your options in general besides McGregor, besides the title fight? Because there are lots of reasons why those could not happen before summer, and you want to fight before summer. So what are your options? What do you think they are?
Yeah, I mean, I think Max would be the top on that list. But, you know, at this point, you know, that BMF belt, putting it on the line, plus the rankings, I will be ranked ahead of him at this point. I know he's now moving up to lightweight, and I'm happy for him for that. I mean, Max, cutting weight is the worst part about the sport, and obviously him going down to 145, continuing to go down to 145, was probably not fun for him. So Max entering into the division that is already stacked, already the most exciting in the UFC, is nothing but great for all of us and for the UFC and for the fans. I think Max would be a great option. You got to put that BMF belt on the line, though. So we'll see how it all plays out.
Thank you. And also, is there anybody else you think you would fight, like maybe you would enjoy fighting in the future in the lightweight division, maybe some new names, maybe anybody you are thinking about would make great fight against Chandler?
There's some fights at 170 that I would love. Going up to 170, I really, really enjoyed a training camp at 170. The hoodwink, the facade of, oh my gosh, I get to go do a whole training camp and then fight at 170 and not have to cut down to 155, which is not an easy task for me. The only reason I've never missed weight and the only reason I've never pulled out of a fight is because I have extreme discipline and I live like a champion. But it is an absolute bear to be where I'm at right now. But it's all part of the job. But some fights at 170 will be awesome. We kicked around some ideas, but obviously we landed on Charles because originally I wanted to stay at 170 because I had already prepared my body and mind for a 170 fight for a year and a half, the better part of a year and a half. But I was able to improvise, adapt, and overcome and get myself down to where I need to be.
Who's the first name that you think of like fighting in 170? About the exciting fight, about the entertaining fight, and so on. Who's the right opponent for you right now?
Colby comes to mind at 170. I think that'd be a fun one. Obviously, I'm in a ridiculously awesome spot right now. When I beat Charles Oliveira, it's hard to even think about the fights at 170 when you're about to fight for the title. I feel I'm one win away from the title at 155, but there's so many fun fights up there. So we'll see.
Thank you.
You mentioned
back here.
Yeah, right here.
Yes, sir.
It's in these fights, right? He doesn't come back. Like he's not going to be there. He showed against you that wasn't necessarily the case. He kind of erased that narrative as the champion. How did he kind of defy maybe some of your expectations, if he did, in that one, and how is that perception of him maybe changed during his time as champion?
I love it because nobody wants to be known as a quitter. Nobody wants to be known as unreliable. Nobody wants to be known as the guy who doesn't perform under the lights. But that's who Charles Oliveira was for a while, and I think that's not a knock on him. It's okay for all of us to go through our ups and downs and our peaks and our valleys and grow as a human being. A little kid from the favelas with a big dream ends up becoming UFC champion, but it wasn't without a little bit of hardship and a little bit of real criticism that he deserved. He was losing fights that he shouldn't have lost. He was missing weight, which is the biggest pet peeve of mine. We are supposed to be professionals. But then he was able to put it all together. And he has put it all together. And he has erased all of that. Now, with that being said, I think, I said in an interview yesterday, everyone's got a little bit of quit in them no matter what, no matter how tough you are, right? It's just about finding that chink in their armor, finding that crack, pushing them to that point. But Charles has continued to elevate that portion of him. And I believe I'm fighting the best Charles Oliveira that we have ever seen, the most dangerous Charles Oliveira that we have ever seen. And when the stakes are high, I decide to turn it on, and I'm excited about it.
And part of that, time as champion was also the fight that was supposed to be a title fight, thing with the scale. Like, obviously, you said, okay. Good, thank you.
Hey.
So over here, Mike, one question. The life of a fighter, the career of a fighter is an extremely unique job. For you, what do you see as some of like the most important characteristics and traits for someone to compete and be successful in this job?
You can think about the very surface level stuff, toughness and hard work and willingness to engage and all of those things. But that's all the physical part of this sport. The mental and the spiritual side is so much more important. The patience, the ability to see the future, the ability to engage in delayed gratification nonstop, knowing that no matter what I do today, it will pay off at some point, because eventually the hard work does pay off. You just have to still be standing there to receive it when it does. And that's what I tell all these young guys. It is not about being successful at 22. It's not about being in the biggest fights at 23. It's about being a guy like me who's past 35. I'm 38 years old, and you get into these positions like this. You want to have longevity in the sport, because it can be a long, long, long career for you. Very fruitful, very successful, and take care of your body. Your body is your greatest asset for every single one of you guys, every single human on the planet, but especially us professional athletes. Treat your body like it is the most important asset that you have, because it is. And it's no secret that I look the way that I look. It's no secret that I perform the way that I perform. It's no secret that I have been the way that I have been, especially for this long at this age, and it's an attention hard. All you're doing is doing what you're supposed to be doing what you need to do, and not what you want to do. And that's really all it is. It's being surrounded by the best people possible, continuing to grow, and continuing to be the best version of yourself, and showing yourself grace when you lose, and patting yourself on the back when you win, and continuing to move forward. That's it.
Michael back here to the left. Hi. Just to piggyback off the stuff that you said earlier. Earlier this week, you talked about your father being in your corner on Saturday. So what it would be like for you to get your first win at Madison Square Garden with your father right there by the cage?
It's going to be special, I think. I talked about my dad's hands the other day, and this camp has been very interesting. I've had this big old cut on my pinky finger for the last 4 weeks, because it got ripped open on some gloves, and it's just in a really bad spot where it's just been cracked open the entire time. And I remember my dad's hands. It was something that I love still to this day so much about them. They're big, and they're cracked, and they're carpenter hands, and he has built this beautiful life for us and provided for his family with the hands that he had. And I know it's insignificant to so many people, but it was uniquely him. And my dad's only been in my corner one other time in the UFC thus far, and that was when I lost to Charles Oliveira, when I wanted to win that belt, and I wanted to put it on his shoulder. And now we get the opportunity to have him there. He doesn't know a thing about mixed martial arts, and he's just there to be a presence. He's there to be a manifestation, and just to be there as a pillar for me, because, yes, I am the hardest worker in the UFC, in the world of mixed martial arts, and I think in sports in general. Yes, I am the most disciplined man on the planet in sports, but it's only because I'm a byproduct of the example that I had from him and my mom, who worked tirelessly, nonstop, and never complained, and did what they had to do at all times. So that's why he's there, and I'm excited that I get that extra corner man for this one, and it's going to be a real special night for the Chandler family.
Just a real brief question. The weight cut has come up a few times. What is your normal walk-around weight? Excuse me. What is your normal walk-around weight?
It's up there. What's really funny about walk-around weights, right, is like a professional athlete might be carrying 25% body fat, and they call that their walk-around weight, when really their walk-around weight should be at whatever they weigh at, about maybe 12% body fat. I hit the 190s, low 190s. I actually was in the low 190s when Hunter called me and said, "Hey, you want to do Oliveira?" And I said, "Yeah, let's do Oliveira." I was like, he said, "How about October 5th?" I went into a straight up weight cut training camp right away. I was like, "Hey, I need a moment to find out if I can actually make weight that quickly because I've been preparing my body for 170." Lo and behold, here we are in Madison Square Garden. And, so I hit the 90s, low 90s.
And if you don't mind, you may not want to say this, what's your current weight right now?
I'm not quite sure, actually. Somewhere around 170.
Hi, Michael. I saw, did you hear the words of Tomas Pinal that you are dangerous because you have no plans for the fight? You have no plan for the fight?
I think I did. I didn't hear the exact interview, but something of that sort, yeah.
So what do you think about it? Is it true that you have no plan? Because I saw that you brought to this camp Dagestani grappler Abdulaziz Datsiev. It's because Charles Oliveira has 2 losses to the grapplers from Dagestan?
That's not exactly why. Aziz is just an awesome friend of mine, awesome training partner. He's here. He will be sitting up here at some point. He is that good. But as far as plans, I've got a plan. Even more of a plan now than I ever have, to be honest with you. As I said, we got Chandler 1.0, Chandler 2.0, 2 different fighters, but it'll still be violent. And, I'll be training with Aziz tonight, and we'll be getting after it, doing some grappling, doing some striking, all kinds of stuff.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.